Hi, good evening. So back to Spook Central now on the Hunter rather, which takes me back because obviously this is the first zone they released during the BfA Alpha. So I spent a good long time, especially on this little bit, because it wasn't even like the whole zone was just opened up.
Recent disappearances, a new curfew will be enforced in Fallhaven. For your protection, all villagers are expected to return.
Here we are,
to their
effectively full
homes
circle, waiting for the alpha for Shadowlands to come out still. And keep
addition,
noting they're
we have
putting
received
things,
reports of
putting
dangerous
sort of
creatures
builds
in the
up, but
vortex.
obviously no one's in yet
Anyone
as far
with
as I can
business
tell.
outside the town limits is urged to
Publicly at
use
any rate.
caution. Please report any suspicious persons or activity to Mayor White at once.
Dearest husband, I don't know who you think you're fooling, but I've seen you sneaking out into the footforest while you think I'm asleep. Whatever it is you're up to, it better not involve that crazy woman in the woods. She's a dangerous one.
But not half as dangerous as I'll be if I find out you're up to no good.
I don't know where these blasted flies came from, but they've returned each morning for a fortnight now. At this rate, we'll run out of feed for the pigs in a month's time. What curse has befallen this place? I'd bet my last torch it has something to do with that old crone.
No, don't want that. I am wondering if we can expect in the next week for people to start being let into the alpha to see what it's actually like. Or bits of it, obviously the very early stuff. Could be good that I'm no longer teaching. I mean, I am still doing a little bit of part-time teaching, but in actual fact, so you know, I'm almost as capable of contracting it from scruffy students, although I don't encounter as many of them as I did. I was actually just thinking recently, though, the nature of the courses I was teaching, though, at the college that I was at, wouldn't be ideal, but I could probably cope with it if they had to close the college a little bit easier, because I'd be able to do lessons online, to be able to access that. They'd be able to upload work from home online, so they'd still be able to carry on doing their stuff.
I apologise for the
Oh, hello.
delay in the latest
Demonic
bush
pigs.
ration. I was given some plant scraps by a colonial wolf down the way from my feet. I'm afraid it may have been tainted. My swine have become afflicted.
Oh, thank you,
with
Chaplain.
allergies that makes them
Missed the last tune.
unusually
All right, yeah, time's changing over again, aren't they? They'll be, well,
to another shipment.
yeah, they'll be changing here. When? Roundabout, is it roundabout Easter? Which is about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that. But yeah, if they do have to, or if they do, whether they have to or not, if they do shut schools or colleges and things like that around, there's going to have to be some thinking about what they do about exams and things like that. I don't think they can just sort of say to students that are planning on going to university in the last couple of months, no, let's leave it till next year. Although some of them might quite like that, if they've been a bit lazy. Do you know, really, in the BfA, I did this so many times, and I actually don't really get bored of it. I do like Drustvar. There are a couple of infuriating bits in it, but only a couple. I do quite like the zone and the quests, I would say. Where am I supposed to be going here? Up or down? I can't remember now. Having now just said that I did this loads of times, I'm pretty sure it's up here. What? Oh, right, yeah.
Lord Admiral's favor, friend. It's too far away.
Alright, ambush me then.
Insipid outside! This village is mine! The mother has willed it!
Didn't like the Anyport quests.
Turn away now. Lest you share their
Oh no, I
fate.
did quite like that. I mean, yeah, as you say. I mean, on this character, like, bearing in mind now, I need to approach it a little bit differently where I can. It's really just to get to level cap and do enough, and really just get in some gear in LFR, dungeons and LFR, because I'm not going to be doing anything at all. On this character. When I finish this character, every now and then I'll go some LFR, then it needs to be other characters. It's really getting ready for Shadowlands. BfA has just been a complete write-off for me. It may well be that Shadowlands is either, it as well, it depends. I don't have very much faith in the, you know, development team, I have to say. I don't think they want to learn lessons. But anyway, what points have I been used to paint my warband? Contrast, I have, yeah. I mean, you really, I'll give you my thoughts. You really don't want my, I hate painting, and I make no serious efforts to get any good at it. Or rare. But I have been using contrast paints to do my Warcraft. I've done Spire Tyrants. I'm just trying to think where they actually are. I can't really go and get them now. I don't know where they are exactly. I'd be able to dig them out and do some photos at some point. What I actually have behind me, I've finally done a thing. It's not all completely ready because there's still a lot of work to do. So what I'd been planning on is basically changing the bedroom and the studio over. So where I am at the moment is not actually the really small room that I was in. I've put the bed in there, and the idea was, because the lighting might look a bit weird on here, and there'll be a reason for that. And sorry, I'm trying to work out. Is that a thing? Is that just a random voice? So I've moved things around. Now, I've moved the green screen really close behind me. It was further away. Now it's further, so I'm going to have to do some work on the lighting, because behind the screen behind me is a gaming table permanently set up. Well, it doesn't have to be permanently set up, but it is at the moment. I'm hoping. So I actually may be able to find something for that if I just get myself. Let me see if I can find it. Because what I've also been doing is I'd intended last year to do 40k. I mean, fantasy is always my priority, but 40k, you know, I've played before and I'll play again. No, where can I put this? But last year obviously got really busy as I was getting ready to do this full time on the other channel. So now I've got, now that that's been sort of done, I've got a bit of time. I'm just trying to see if I can find it. Oh, it is. So I just did it on my phone. It's not very good, but so yeah. So the where that blue screen is on the left of that, that's actually the blue side of the green screen that's behind me. So yeah, it does mean, and I haven't been doing any content on my Warhammer channel because I want to get to the point where I'll be able to do some each week. I mean, I was going to be doing some on this as well, and that's not happened. Time is not on my side at the moment. Everything's taking longer. Is that the same thing against that bloody rare again? Anyway. But yeah, my thoughts on contrast paints. I think it's good for some things and not so good for others. So, for example, this weekend I was doing some Necrons because starting 40k, there's a few armies I'll do. But there's... they're doing a little escalation league and Necrons can be painted up really quickly. Now they were undercoated black and I just use normal paints on those because when I want to use metal, if I'm going to use predominantly metal, I definitely don't really want to use contrast. And there are some other things that contrast paints are not great as well, but what they are is really good for painting something quite quickly. Anyway. Mine a golden demon compared to mine. Do I play Warcraft? I mean, it's difficult to say I play Warcraft because I played one game of it, but it's just like, you know, at the gaming club, I'll be up effectively for playing Warcraft. I've got a Age of Sigma tomorrow. If someone hadn't have asked for that, I'd have basically been going on Facebook and saying, does anyone want a game of Age of Sigma or Warcry? And I do, each time I go now, take my Spire Tyrants at least. I've got a few others, warbands as well, but they're now sort of painted. I painted them as Nurgle, like Celts, so they've got ginger hair and green skin. Because again, that would be easier. Flesh tones I don't think are all that great with contrast. But then again, you just use your initiative and don't paint them in flesh tones. If you're an extremely lazy painter like I am. But I quite like Warcry. It has, to my mind, there's one thing that's not great about... There's two things that aren't really good about Kill Team. Warcry solves one of them, but not the other. So the two things I would say about Warcry that are not great is... that Warcry solves is what a lot of people that I know have played it complain about is that not a lot happens in it. You can have a whole turn and you don't actually do anything, and the reason for that is that, you know, models typically have one wound, they might have two. It's very much like in 40k itself. So that of course means then you roll into hit and you roll into wound and then there's armor and stuff like that. By the time you've done that, there's nothing. There's nothing happening a lot of the time. Because you either, at the very least, cripple an enemy model, or you do nothing. So most of the time, or a lot of the time, you do nothing. It depends on your team, your kill team. Now, Warcry does away with that because all your models have got quite a few wounds, so it's possible you will do some damage to something, and it simplifies it all quite a lot as well. Where it runs into trouble, I suppose there's a couple of areas, but one area certainly where it runs into trouble is you still have the situation where if you've got a warband, your opponent's going to be hitting you on 3s and you've got to be hitting them on 5s. It doesn't matter if you've got twice as many models, you're probably going to lose. It really doesn't favour like weak warbands because you can't just overwhelm them with numbers. So that's the problem with Kill Team and Warcry. Anyway, have I played against Seraphim? I have, but not the new Seraphim. There is a player at the club who uses Seraphon. I've played against him a few times, but that was not with the new book. I have only just got the new book myself today. So I've been reading it. Very interesting. You can do a lot of stuff with them. I'm not sure whether I like it or not, because there's a lot to take in. Some of it might be quite powerful. But
Tidings, I fear.
yeah, it's
I must have
it is very, very interesting, certainly. And they needed a new book, really.
cursed state. Fallhaven
Do I like the turn-based of Warcraft as opposed to AS of 40k? I mean, 40k. I mean, if you mean turn-based as in one like model at a time, I don't think you. I mean, you could do one unit at a time in 40k, I suppose. I think for Warcry, one model at a time is better for Warcry, and I think for 40k and AOS, doing a whole turn of the whole army at a time is better for that. What I would say is between 40k and AOS, I think 40k's is better. The problem with Age of Sigmar is because the first turn is not randomly determined. But after every turn, because it's randomly determined, you can have a double turn. The double turn is devastating. I would say if anyone gets a double turn in Age of Sigmar in the second battle round, if they've got if their opponent has gone first for whatever reason, and they get the second turn next, so they get a double turn right at the start, I judge anyone who does not win the game from that position, frankly. Because you really should win. I mean, a double turn later on in the game, maybe not so much. But right at the start, I judge people harshly if they don't win the game at that point. Anyway, you've heard arguments for and against Warcraft style play. If you like the tactics, you dislike Wargrim. See, I'm not saying it's brilliant. I have to confess, the first time I read it through, I was a bit dubious about it because it seemed very fiddly to me. There's a lot of stuff about it. I'll tell you the main gripe I have with it is that there are rules to use, your Age of Sigmar armies and stuff like that. Stuff like that makes it a good gateway game. But I just need to try and not let my pet die, because I think I might be letting my pet die here. He is actually going to die. Oh no, I'm not getting away with it. Get away with it. Well done, Fluffykins. Was that a thing I needed to do? I'll just go and return that and then carry on my merry way that way. But, like in Kill Team, you get the rules for those in the Kill Team core rulebook. And then I suppose there's additional ones in supplements. With Age of Sigmar, you have to buy these cards. And they're sort of alright, except you have to buy each individual one. They're not... The first lot went out of production permanently. And then, until they brought them back with a box of models you may not want... And then there's nowhere to put them. Like, they don't even design a folder so you can sort of keep them. So you have to come up with your own solution to sort of keep them. That's the main issue with it. And as I say, it doesn't solve the problem that an army with like strength and toughness 3 is just going to do really badly. Like, you can make a Stormcast Eternals warband and it'll have 5 models in it, and there's nothing you can do about that. It will have 5 models because a typical warband is 1,000 points. And your cheapest Stormcast is 170 points. So that is all there is to it. However, so you've got 5 of those. You think, well, that's not very many because some warbands will have like 10 models in it. That Stormcast Eternals warband, as long as you choose the sensible models, will... I mean, there might be the odd little... Because that's the thing, you randomly determine like your victory objectives. In theory, there might be one where... they can't win because they're just too spread out and you're good at evading them. But I've when I look at the strength 3, toughness 3 warbands, I think to myself, could these evade Stormcast Eternals and just keep outnumbering them? And I just don't see it. So there are some warbands that are just not competitive. Spire Tyrants, out of the ones made for Warcry, I think are decent, without being too overpowered. But I still reckon I would beat most of the others with it. But you look at some of the really tough ones, like Stormcast Eternals would be really strong. Iron Jaws is pretty strong. In fact, I did have a game with Iron Jaws. They were very good. Nighthaunt, now that we've got Banshee Rolls, there are a few that are just strong. And it's like you won't really... They won't really kill them and they can go after you quite easily. Like Ninetales are really good for it because everything can fly. And mobility in that game is king. Absolutely incredible to be able to have an entire warband that can fly. She's a witch. Oh yeah. Well, they deliberately did that, ain't there? There's some nice little references in this zone. Nothing in here, is there? But yeah, I mean, when the alpha first came out, when I first got into it, which wasn't immediately it came out, but it was quite early on. You know, all there was Drustvar, really, for Alliance. And you know, and if you created a character, if you went, I remember, because right at the start, if you went to Stormwind or something like that, you weren't getting back here. There was no way to get back. And because you couldn't import your own characters as well, you're just having to use the stuff that they had without a decent transmog. But that's the way it is, unfortunately, at the start. The only good thing about getting into... Well, I say the only good thing, it's not. But the best thing about getting into the alpha and beta is that out of the list of mounts they give you the magic rooster, which I don't actually have. On retail, on like my main game. So that's my little treat every couple of years. When you get into the alpha beta, ride the magic rooster. But I do like this. I mean, in terms of looks, Stormsong Valley is my favourite zone. Mostly the bees and the honey monsters and stuff. But it's a very nice zone. But this one I quite like in terms of atmosphere and story, I think. Oh, what's happened to Fluffykins? He is in need of healing. Is that just because I've dinged? One good thing about having pets, you can do that sort of stuff while they're mixing them out with them. Yeah, where's the next one? Oh dear. Oh damn it. Didn't mean to trap that one. Oh. It's the image of the game board intensity. Oh, sorry, I've forgotten about that. Sorry, let me just get rid of that. No, it was not. But I have an incredible amount of sort of clearing stuff away and tidying up and everything before everything's sort of settled in place, because at the moment it's all still quite cramped. What I need is to get myself into a situation where I can easily take down the screen, which I can, but it needs to basically lean up against the wall to my left, which at the moment it can't, but it will be able to once I've got it sorted. Been playing through Drustvar several times now. It always seemed like the story of the actual Just was never really finished. Yeah, we were discussing this before, weren't we? It's like I always think each zone has its own story that could be continued. They know they're not going to continue all of them, and I suspect that the stories are written so that they can be chosen later on which ones do get taken forward. Whether as part of the main storyline or just a patch, you know, some extra patch stuff. Oh, hello. Attracted someone's attention. And I plan on doing a video on the UK government's response to coronavirus. I think I already have. But obviously their response keeps changing, which means I'll keep having to do things. Ultimately, it depends on how YouTube are going to behave with it in terms of how much. Tomorrow, for example, every single video is to some extent Corona. They are all, at the moment, currently demonetized, but because they were just demonetizing everything, even on review. But the last couple, they've actually let get through review. I'm wondering if they've changed their guidelines. So we'll see. Either I will get nothing at all for today's work, or it will all be fine, in which case I can do much more. But yeah, I will be doing, I would still do the odd one where I can anyway. But I've already done one on their initial response. They've technically changed their response, but I want to give it another day or two to see if they change again, basically. Because at the moment they're in the denial bit, which is where they've sort of announced something but unofficially. So they can always deny they ever announced it. So I just want to wait a day and see if they still mean it. Is there a point to the two fighting ghost rares in this zone? You can side with one to fight the other. You've killed both and never got anything. Was it just flavour? I can't remember. In all honesty, I cannot remember. I suspect just flavour. I don't mind in some ways having just random little events going on in the zone that don't necessarily give you anything. Because one of my criticisms of WoW has always been that it is too gear focused. Shouldn't always just be about that. Right, is he... Have I got... Oh. Can't whistle, can I? No. That is a shame. But it is an incredibly long time since I've done this zone. Because I, you know, did it to death when the alpha first came out, because this was the zone that was in for Alliance. And then didn't when it came live, because the only character I sort of played with on BfA up until now, really, is my Paladin, which was Horde, because I joined a raiding guild at the end of Legion that was Horde, and then, you know, realised I wasn't actually going to be able to play BfA properly because of work. Which doesn't seem to have gone away. You'd have thought, oh, going full-time YouTube, that'll go away because you just spend a few hours a day on your videos and then the rest of the time to play games. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way for me. I've ended up adopting a fairly useless business model, which means I still have to do a load of work each day.
You mind your business, and I'll mind mine.
Oh, I like these ones, actually, strangely enough. With the pig with the goggles. I like looking at the pig with the goggles. There we go. Awesome, fell goggle pig. Morning, Stormsend, I think. Actually, evening for me. Am I in lockdown? No, no. In fact, the region I'm in, I mean, the country isn't in general, because the government are prioritising the economy, but in general, the particular region I'm in, there's not that many known cases. There could be any number of unknown ones, but it's not hit the region I'm in big yet. So we will see. Obviously, lockdown for me is not undisruptive, but it's not as disruptive as it would be for some others. In fact, many others. Yeah. So we are, I mean, because we're a little bit behind in the UK compared to some countries in terms of the ramp up. We are just in that period of waiting to see just how insane we are. Such an awkward time of year as well, because you know, we don't actually, if you get something, it could just be flu or a cold. Don't have any actively known case of corona in your state, except one person that's brought here specifically because, oh yeah, brought no, for the medical facilities, yeah. There are a few where I am, but not many. I've not heard of any specifically in the town I'm in, and not that many in the region. I mean, inevitably there will be, of course. But, as I say, it just hasn't exploded here yet. Oh. You ended up with flu yourself within 2... Oh, so... And you would have known that. See, yeah, and over here, I don't even know how we would know. Because they're not testing. The only people being tested here are those who either pay for it, testing, which is like nearly 400 quid. Or, I mean, if you... I suppose... Well, you would. If you were admitted to hospital with sort of symptoms that could be, then you would be tested, but you'd have to become seriously ill for that. They're not testing people just because they develop symptoms that could be it. They're just telling you to stay at home. Which basically means you've got a whole population of people, like, if you... So you could have a situation, without trying to get too political, you could have a situation where you've got some people who can't afford not to go to work, who may, you'll be in a position where they really ought to stay off but can't afford to. And then on the other hand, you might get some people who, you know, who can, or they would... What am I supposed to do here? All right, yeah. Or they could... get sick pay or whatever that would be fine for them, and they just get a bit of a sniffle and go off work, and maybe they didn't need to. Free tests in Australia, there are in European countries in general, not the UK. Right, where am I off now? Down there. In fact, in South Korea, they've got drive-through testing because they reckon they can do more tests there than they can in a clinic. They get a faster rate of testing. So you just go up to a drive-through and get tested. Your test is covered by health insurance. No government needed, no extra cost either, yeah. See, our health insurance is the government. Unless, of course, you have private health insurance. Oh, you've got a drive-through Minnesota as well. That's good. I suppose in the States you've probably got a situation where individual states may well do more than the federal government's doing. Oh, I love this.
Accused of practicing witchcraft and of inflicting a curse upon the village of Fletcher's Hollow. You will be hereby tried for
Drustvar stands
or a stranger approaches. What is it this time? Oh, how I loathe interruptions. Constable, it's your business here, Mainlander.
Oh, sorry, it's all getting very confusing. I'm just clicking on things before I should. I just ran through the best farming spot. Ah, well, I'm not a skinny on this. And again, professions can get knotted as well. The only reason I'd show any interest in professions, quite frankly, is if it was on the old system, where you needed to get your professions up in this one to be able to do it in Shadowlands, but you don't. So, sod it. You know, they've got the new system where you don't have to do that, which is, I suppose, is good. I don't have firm opinions on it, but I think it's generally probably okay. But what it does mean is I'm certainly not going to bother with them. But on this one, I have... What do I have? I have dual crafting an inscription on this character. In theory. But the other thing I also usually do in expansion, I have several trade monkey out. So I would have characters that would feed this character herbs and ore and stuff. But that's not really the case now. Selling gems is still worthwhile, yeah. I mean, if I needed gold at the moment, which I actually did technically on this character, to be able to pay for the heirloom upgrades. And what I did was got one of them that tokens. Oh, it's gone down. It's just under 200,000 at the moment.
I need a target. It's too far away.
Strange camera phenomenon in the centre going on. Oh, sorry, yeah. Right, do you know what? I am going to have to... Let's go. It's my... The reason is because I do now have the green screen very close behind me. So we're going to have another little song and dance with setting up the lights and seeing how best I can do that. Yeah, it's just... It will keep happening, I'm afraid. Unfortunately, I can't really... The screen is as far back as it can get whilst that gaming table is up there. And the whole point of doing this move was for the gaming table. I did think I would have a little bit more room than I did. But in truth be told, I couldn't actually tell until I'd done it anyway. But yeah, I may be able to do something with the lights, but it's going to be just, again, tweaking all the time. Do you know, I put myself to some trouble, don't I? There are some people who just don't bother with green screens at all. Don't have any of this nonsense to worry about. Oh, I've done them all now. Done them all.
We must act with haste. Glory to bought us some time, mainlander. Let's just hope that these villagers truly mean no harm to the Lady Waycrest. Constable, you may
What is your
continue
business
this
with House Waycrest?
trot. At last, let's get on with it. Has Miss Waycrest
Mainlander,
determined
eh?
how she wishes to be tested?
Even
Mainlander,
rotten
eh?
crops we grow.
Make blight fall upon the coven. Don't get many travellers here. This land is cursed.
You mind your business, and I'll mind mine. May blight fall upon the coven.
How can I help? The coven will pay for their atrocities.
Is that worth doing? Do I need to do that? I suspect I don't. I'm going to try where I can and just stick to what I need to do. Because especially now when you can do the war campaign stuff before level cap. You have been able to for a while, haven't you? I just want to get the main quest lines done from each zone. And then get that done and get to... I mean, I'll get to level cap pretty much with that anyway at this rate. Because at the moment I don't even have the maximum heirloom stuff for XP again. I don't have that ring. I'm going to keep the legendary ring on.
I'm out of range.
For, well, probably until it's no longer of any value. Tell you what I would quite like is if in this game they made it really clear what was the main quest line and what wasn't. Like in some of those it's like super clear, you can't possibly mistake it. What's happened to him? I thought I just healed him, it didn't do anything. We're nearly there. Nope. Right, let's see. Need an onion. Oh, I didn't get all the flies. Or should I do that quest? It's only a quick one. I might just do it anyway.
Mainlander, eh? Even rotten crops will grow.
I may have bitten off more than you can shoot it. Oh, I don't need more. Did I hear about the Nazoth LFR fights? No, what about them? Oh shit. Oh crap, what have I done? Alright, okay. Should have just feigned death there. No, go on, what's happened with those? What's happening here? I've just died, it's not bloody classic. Oh no, someone else has nicked me mobs. Boo. Ah, I can't even remember how to resurrect my pet now. Yeah, he's dead. Where's, oh, it's there. If you don't have the clock, hang on a minute, you get mind control straight away so people will queue in without it. Clock? Right, this is something I don't know about then, isn't it? What's the clock? Oh, cloak. Oh, sorry. Well, I have the cloak now, don't I? So, right, I see. Shouldn't really, yeah, it shouldn't really let you queue up for a fight without it if you need it then. I mean, I suppose I'd be okay with the notion of you need it to be able to do that fight. It shouldn't really let you do that fight without it, should it? That's poor. Right, let's just try. Come on, Fluffykins, hold it together. He's not holding it together. Something needs to die quite quickly. Oh, no. Oh, well done. Good doggy. Oh, I got a cloak. I don't think I can use. So, oh, no longer does. Right. Then, hold on. Due to the tight DPS check in the fight, a lot of the raid wipes started to get 10 stacks of determination. You can still remove the cloak while in the wing without being kicked, so you got some idiots. Alright. Why would people... Yeah. But this is the problem with LFR, ultimately. Is that... You know, it's a social experience where there's no consequences for being a dick. And they really need to introduce some. They ought to... I mean, it'd be so easy, wouldn't it? I mean, they've designed it like this. They've designed a fight where you need this thing. I mean, another oversight, isn't it? What they should have done was just to say, right, you can't unequip your cloak when you're in here. And that's not normal. Normally you could unequip a piece of gear if you're out of combat. But just say, no, this you have this cloak on. And that would be better than even teleporting someone out. Because you could argue just teleport someone out with it. But then someone might do it inadvertently.
Traveller.
So no, I hadn't heard about that. That's a bit unfortunate. I suppose I need to do that on my character now, don't I?
I'm becoming impatient. Finally, the trial can commence. As is customary, the Lady Waycrest has chosen the test she will undergo to prove her innocence of the accused crime of witchcraft. She has selected this mainlander to administer the tests. An unusual choice, but as a show of good faith, I will allow it. The first test will be the shedding of tears. Let it be known that Miss Waycrest
Method tweeted that they were doing some LFR to help people get through the wing. Oh, it's done it again. Look.
Even capable of weeping. Show us that.
Ahead, mainlander. Show them.
Calm down. There may still be trickery afoot.
You still haven't finished the Azeroth wing on your main. Tried it 3 different evenings. Literally had Kel'Thas tanks, all 3. So could never get it done.
That even the voracious bloodfly will not taste of a witch's vile blood.
Does that mean blood elves? You've got a blood elves no good at tanking it, or am I missing something here?
Don't worry about me. I can handle a few bug bites. Ow! Oh! Oh! That stings.
Interesting, but hardly conclusive. Let us move on to the final test, the purging of the viscera. It is well known that a witch's power is fueled not by food, but by
oh, sorry, particular realm, okay.
Her victims. Her insides are an empty husk. Are you prepared to prove otherwise, Miss Waycrest?
Indeed, I shall. The venom, mainlander. Oh, I don't feel so.
She got sick! That's impossible! Maybe she's not a witch after all. But what of our village?
Quiet! I will be the one passing judgment here. I remain unconvinced. This still does not explain the happenings at Fletcher's Hollow.
What? After all I just went through?
Tests or no, you will only be absolved once we uncover the truth of what happened to our village.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mainlander, but I may have to ask another favor. Greetings, Outlander.
Alright, what we're going to get? Oh, we could get that. Can't get that, so we might as well get that. Oh, why didn't that upgrade? That's just mean. Right, witch hunting. I mean, I've said before with LFR, often the problem with it is you don't need everyone to do anything sensible, because otherwise it would never go ahead. It would be useless. But you usually do need your tanks to know what they're doing. Sometimes a well-geared and knowledgeable tank will be able to do it themselves. It depends on the fight. But you generally need your tanks to know what you're doing. You need at least a couple of healers to be actually healing properly. And you may need some DPS to switch to priority targets at certain times. But generally you don't need the majority to do that. So if you end up in a situation where you easily can in LFR, where you don't have tanks that know what they're doing, or you don't have any DPS that are doing the priority stuff, or for whatever other reason, and same with healers, then you can be absolutely buggered. And if the whole point of LFR is it's just for people who can't or won't do the proper raiding, and it's just like tourism mode, then it should be that, and it's not sometimes. I just don't think there's very much joined up thinking with what LFR should be and is. Right, let's avoid picking up side quests. So the Azeroth encounter links people together with a line, and they have to go to you and follow with you. Oh, you're joking. No, okay, that is no. What? So, right. How would someone, let's say someone like me who goes into it, has never seen the fight or anything like that, how would I know what to do on LFR then? Because that's another thing. It should be evident what to do. You should not expect people to research it. It's LFR. You shouldn't expect people to have add-ons. It's LFR. What on earth? No, I've done it wrong one again. Oh, that's putting me off even want to give it a try. I probably will at some point, I suppose. Says in the Dungeon Journal. Yeah, but see why people shouldn't have to read the Dungeon Journal either. It's supposed to be tourist mode. It's actually supposed to be for casuals. And sometimes when you read something in the journal, it doesn't necessarily tell you what you have to do either. It might tell you what a mechanic does. It might give you some general advice for tank, DPS and healer. Right, alright, let's tell you what, let's just get myself somewhere. Let's have a little look, see if I would think I can discern it. Azeroth. Invulnerable, strategic to ensure you remain sane. Position carefully within the arena to ensure that Mindgrass does not pull you in. See, I mean, I'd read that and go, position carefully, what does that mean? Leave room for pairs of your allies with paranoia to reach one another safely. Again, you'd have to see paranoia before you even knew who it was. Maximise the effects of synaptic shock to bring down Psychos before it can count. Again, you don't know what any of these are till you've seen the fight. And that would require you, when you're seeing the fight, to have a little think about it and work out what's going on, which might take a couple of goes. In the meantime, people who do know what to do with the fight are getting upset that you're not doing it. Like, because LFR is entirely like anonymous strangers, they're in it for themselves. There's no like common purpose like there is in a raiding guild. You really can't do things like that. Because I look at those instructions, I wouldn't know what to do. All I would say is, Right, it's telling me to do certain things with certain abilities. I'd have to go into the fight and see what those abilities are. How to recognise them. And I might get away with it to a certain extent. Because I'll have boss mods that might, I only say might, give me some clues to what to do. Because you've said about a line there, it doesn't say anything about a line in there in terms of the instructions. So you'd have to discern that yourself. Explained it to them in more detail. It had 6 attempts. Yeah, I mean, I will say what might be straightforward for some people, to a complete casual who may, you know, not even really play much in the way of computer games and certainly may not have raided ever. It may be more difficult for them to realise what to do. And yeah, I'm sure some of them are not even necessarily trying because LFR encourages that. LFR is for the people who are not going to raid properly. For what, again, for whatever reason.
Looks like they're onto us. Protect the civilians.
And a lot of the reasons will be people can't be asked, because a lot of the people who will do LFR will be people on their mains that are actually playing the game a lot and could raid if they wanted to, but they don't want to. Because why do they want to, you know, wipe on a boss repeatedly to kill it on a higher mode? They're not that bothered. And Azeroth fighting is around 80 to 90% of people knowing what they're doing, not just auto-attacking. Wow. Jesus. Seriously. That is appalling. If that is the case, that is absolutely appalling. Because even when people do know what they're doing on that fight, they don't always do it. Like, you can have mythic raiders on an alt or something, or on the main even, who just want to go in there and do a load of DPS, go high on the meters, not actually do what they're supposed to be doing, and then, you know, bitch at other people because their DPS is too low, even if they were trying to do the mechanics. Right, I've probably got some transmogging to do, haven't I?
I've already lost 2 good men in there. Don't make yourself the third.
You're able to talk strange to the Jaina fight in Design, the Cahun fight in Uldir, and the Shara fight. Can't talk people through himself. Oh. I mean, I can't speak about the Jaina one. Have I even done the Jaina one? I don't remember if I've even done it. I don't remember it. Maybe I've never done it. But I've done the Cahun one, and you don't need everyone to know what they're doing on that on LFR. I mean, granted, you need a few, it seems to me. That was a tricky one, potentially. But by no means all. I certainly didn't know much beyond what I was doing when I was doing the raid testing for it. Which in itself is probably more than most. I mean, I always think it's bad enough that anyone needs to know what to do beyond some raid basics. I mean, I would expect, in LFR, I would expect nothing more than doing literally raid basics. That is, if some crap appears from under you, don't stand in it. That tanks, if they're getting debuffs on them that mean the next type of attack is going to hurt a lot, tank swap. Face stuff away from the raid, grab ads, that sort of stuff. Right, I was not going to pick up side quest, was I? That didn't go well there.
Should not have entered here.
I don't even mind a certain element of DPS check about LFR. You know, make them like... I sometimes used to in the old days get bosses that were... They didn't require a huge amount of skill, but they were essentially a DPS check. I'm okay with that. Obviously, you don't expect it to be too onerous. Expect an average level of skill with the item level requirements for the fight. I really don't think there should be much more to it than that. If people want to do interesting fights, then that's what the proper raids are for. I don't really see that LFR serves any purpose if it's just going to require the sort of skill set that is required of people doing organised raiding. Alright, yeah, I'm not bothered about that.
The coven will swallow all.
Oh, I have to do it for one of them now. I'm just seeing Ravager control.
The coven will claim you.
Alright, let's do one of these then. Where did that other bugger come from? Oh, right. I failed to control it, I see. You, as a progression raider, and kind of disagree with your stance. It seems Like you're settling for the unimportance of LFR when it's possible to expect more and get more. But why? Like, if you wanted more than that, you would do at the very least normal raiding, for which you can do pugs if you had to, but I would never recommend it. There are guilds that just do super casual raiding, even heroic, on a very casual basis. I don't, and because of the nature of normal and heroic, you don't even need, especially if you're DPS or, you know, a non-essential part, you know, you could be there 1 week and not there the next, and you'd always get in because it scales. You'd like them to remove normal raiding. Only thing with normal is the... Well, I mean, I've said before, if they were to get rid of a form of raiding, I personally would agree that I think normal has the least to offer. Because all it seems to be is a bit of gearing for heroic raid guilds. You know, gear yourself up in there and then do your heroics with a bit more gear. Whereas you could just take longer to progress through heroic if gear's the issue. But given that they have it, if you're gonna have something in LFR that means coordination is required, I mean that's what normal is. Doesn't fit into the schedule in any heroic guild. Well, no, I mean, I can't. But there are guilds, and now that it's easier to go cross-realm and stuff like, well, you can go cross-realm with normal and heroic at all times. I just think there will be a guild, like normal or heroic, because they're so casual. And you wouldn't necessarily make every week. I mean, if I'd have tried really hard, if I'd have wanted to join a guild like that, I would have been able to. I just thought that I would get frustrated. And I think I still would. Right. Seeing as this still hasn't worked. That doesn't look good. Oh. Yes, I think I remember this. Oh dear. Hey. Right. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I mean, the bottom line for me is that in LFR, you are not going to get people who are going to put the effort in. There will be those who are actual, genuine casuals. They're like me with painting, I suppose. They're not interested in becoming good at the game. It's a role-playing game for them. And you could argue, you know, why do an MMO if you're not going to engage in the social aspect of it? But at the end of the day, most good role-playing games these days are MMOs. And they are now designed to be played as a single-player game with lots of people about. You can play it as a single-player game. So there are those who just do not want to get good at the game, They just want to do the story. That's what LFR was supposed to be. That was the stated reason for it. It was the people who pay their subs the same as the Mythic Raiders. Why should I miss out on this content just because I'm not going to do Mythic Raiding? That was the argument. Oh dear. And then you've got the other side of it. Like I say, you've got the people who do know what they're doing in there. But as far as they're concerned, you know, they do their job in their raid guild. And they cannot be asked doing it in LFR. As far as they're concerned, it's beneath them. Let the scrubs do that. They just want to go in and, you know, compensate for something in their life by beasting everyone on the damage meters. And it just makes for a cocktail of very few, you know, so you'll have some people. I mean, I would always do my jobs on it in LFR because I wasn't interested in wiping. So you'll have some people who will know what to do and will do it. But the rest of it is always going to be made up of people who don't know what they're doing. Or do know what they're doing and can't be asked. Vast majority of raiders in your progression guild didn't have a rat behind about the law. They would complain if you stayed back to look around or read the text what was happening. Well, there's that as well, but I mean in LFR specifically. The other thing that is, well, I mean, it's
All right then, back to the fight.
where are we? Come on. Forgotten which way I'm going. This way. But I mean, you know, that is you'll never beat that. That the majority of people in that raid are not going to do any jobs. The on DPS will smash their buttons on something. Healers, if you're lucky, will actually attempt to heal. And tanks, if you're lucky, will attempt to do some tanking. The DPS are the only ones you'll almost guarantee will at least attempt to do something. Because I've only ever done this in the alpha, this is a lot more populated than it used to be. Let's have a look. LFR, you get runes that are good to boost stats. You can make the raiders. Well, yes. I mean, I don't know in BfA, of course, what they've done in previous ones is by the time you get towards the end, you get the permanent rune, don't you? Do we get that? 7k per tune for a full week and then just hope for some BOE gear to sell on auction house. Alright. Oh yeah, the permanent rune. So I mean, that was always the deal, wasn't it? You had to get the runes. You don't need the runes on all the time though, do you? But for a fight where there's a DPS check element to it, yes. And then at the end you get the permanent rune and that's that.
What's your business here?
I mean, the way I used to do it, of course it'd be different for different people. I used to get my runes if I got them at all. I mean, either I would just buy them, or, you know, if I did LFR on my outs, I'd save it from those.
I have many wares.
Yeah, I don't even have the rep for flying at the moment, and that's not really happening at the moment. It may never happen, I may just abandon the old motion of it, which will be disappointing. I would have thought Mythic Raiders by now would have had the rep, yes. Which is another thing I dislike having as a Mythic Raider after Warlords. Warlords was fine because all it required of you was that you raid. So did previous expansions, quite frankly. Legion was the first expansion where things were required of you to raid, that you had to do, that were, you know, trivial but time-consuming content for a Mythic Raider.
Can't you see I'm busy? Attention! It has been determined that another witch was in fact responsible
Hail,
for the
traveller.
curse in
Fair
Fletcher's
winds
Hollow.
and following seas. That's better. Now let's...
Look out! Enemies from the woods!
Thank you, Constable. It's an ambush! Defend the villagers!
The traps aren't slowing them down anymore! More incoming!
Am I in Europe? Yes. One of the northern provinces. Oh, sorry, you're asking for Storm Singer. It's from Australia, isn't it? Which isn't that, doesn't that share, yeah, don't that share some realms with the US? Oh crap. Poor old Fluffykins is dying.
You are fools to resist. The heart's bane will plague old Tyrant. Will take you.
Marshal, what do you know of this covenant? Tell me what is happening to our land.
I mean, I think there's... Isn't the case? I thought they were the same, but obviously you'd probably have some realms where people from Australia, New Zealand and so on would congregate, so they had suitable time zones.
Your men will travel to Aram's stand. I will meet you there after a brief light fall upon the cover.
My lady, it will be safer if...
Well, I will not hear it, Marshal. This mainlander will accompany me and ensure I come to no harm.
Yeah, I thought they were the same, yeah.
Many deals for a friend of
We
mine.
ride!
Like you.
Come, hero.
Oh, actually, that can't put through the thing.
You like?
How many casuals complained about having to PvP for those essences? Some people just want a raid essence, don't care about strats. I mean, I've just sort of understood that, really. I mean, an MMO has so many different ways to play the game. And it's understandable. I mean, I would... See, a Mythic Raider... I mean, well, certainly I can only speak for myself, of course. And potentially people I talk to. as a Mythic Raider, I would chunter about having to do certain things. But you did accept that there should be some things you do outside of the raiding itself to get your character ready. Now, I would still argue about having to do things like PvP and stuff like that. What I would say is, if I'm a casual... Well, I am a casual player. I'm a super casual player. I'm playing round about 2 days a week. Now, as a casual player, if I... Oh, I really don't like doing this quest with the girl. But no, I'm not going to get distracted by side quests. The creepy girl, I do like doing that. Alright, I don't know where I'm going now. Sorry, rambling again while I got distracted by the creepy girl. Yeah, so as a casual player, I've got a few hours. Let's say more than I've got now, because 2 hours is rubbish. You can't really play it for 2 hours a week. This is just, I'm hoping for more time later on. If Shadowlands piques my interest, in which case, if it does, great. I'll find more time. If it doesn't, well, that is just probably it. I'll just probably leave it altogether at that point. I'm really just back here now, hoping it will. But if you've got, let's say you're playing 6 or 8 hours or something a week, you are, and you're paying your money for it, and you're just doing it casually, you're not expecting to have to do the organised stuff or anything like that, if you're fine with that, you are really not going to appreciate having to do a type of content you don't enjoy. And because the game, see for me, as a casual player, I don't think the game should be power gear focused. It seems to me, like if you think about the different types of player you've got, you need the power gear for the very competitive players, whether it be raiders, you know, PvPers, dungeoneers, like Mythic Dungeon, competitive dungeoneers. They, of course, need the gear to be able to access that content. Casual players don't. You need a certain level of gear. You don't. Beyond that, you don't really at all. Like on my Paladin, I don't need to do any more LFR beyond just maybe doing the fights. So I've done the fights. I don't need more gear to get ready for Shadowlands, because as soon as Shadowlands comes out, I'll do quests where I'll be replacing it anyway. That's fine. If I was, you know, when I was Mythic raiding and in a new expansion, I wouldn't be replacing my gear very quickly with quest gear. It would be quite late on in the leveling process before that happened. But for a casual player, you're going to be getting it straight away, so you don't need the power gear. So the motivation is for stuff that lasts. You know, transmog gear, style type stuff. You know, non-power rewards. But they just have the same attitude to everything, and so they get, you know, so then you're getting casual players thinking that the way to win the game is to get the better gear, the higher item level gear, because it pushes it onto you. And then, as you say, they're going to have to do types of content they don't want to do, and of course that's going to piss them off. Oh, in terms of account-wide stuff as well, there's an awful lot of stuff I would have as account-wide. Again, I don't... I mean, this is my opinion. I'm not going to say this is any stronger than that. But I don't really think an MMO should be based around the idea that you have alts. Obviously, it should allow them. I'm not saying it shouldn't allow you to have them. But it shouldn't, like, almost expect it. And if it's not going to be based on the assumption that you will get several, then I see no reason. I don't see why everything shouldn't be account-wide. I mean everything. Even gear. I wouldn't have anything that was bind on pickup. I would have bind on account or bind on equip. Or just not bound at all. But I can understand why you'd want to bind most things, if not everything. Or most things anyway, not trade goods, obviously. I mean, really, what would be the harm in having even gear account-wide? Because all it seems to me to serve making you do everything on your out is just to keep people busy, because there's not enough in the game to keep you busy on a single character. So it seems to me that their model is encouraging you to get multiple characters. It almost necessitates it. Which for me is unfortunate, because like in there are some games where I quite like different types of character. In this game, the only character I can sort of deal with on a very regular basis is the paladin. Like even this hunter, I like the hunter, and I'll level it in the next one with the intention of doing LFR on it. But I wouldn't want to play on the hunter like all the time. I'll quite happily play my paladin as my main on a regular basis, even a frequent basis, but not.
How can I help?
Oh, what have I forgotten?
Fair winds.
What am I missing? Oh. People are not spending time in the game if everything was account-wide. They want to keep you playing. Well, that's the thing. Because there isn't enough in the game to keep them occupied on one character. That's my point. Whereas if the model of the game was based on the notion of there's enough on this game to keep you interested on one character, they wouldn't need to do that, would they?
What is your business with House Waycrest? Yeah! Ride to Aram's stand, Bella.
I mean, that's just an opinion. I'm not saying, you know, they absolutely have to have everything account-wide. I think they should certainly have more things account-wide. But I just think if you accept the notion that you should be able to just play one main character in any role-playing game, MMO or otherwise, then there is no need to restrict or repeat content on your other characters. Obviously, certain levels, obviously you should still level on it, and you should still have to do the main quest lines and stuff like that. I'm okay with that. Rep, definitely out, but I think rep is out anyway. I think rep is fine, because that is account-wide, isn't it?
How can I help?
Is it? Am I right in that?
Keep your sails true. I can't believe we're here. My father used to tell me stories about this place. It contains an ancient secret of our house, from back when the Waycrest first settled this land. The way is opening. Fair winds and following seas.
You would play more if your alts were viable to what you've done.
Drustvar stands
Ah, well, you see,
firm.
that's another problem, isn't it?
Glory to House
If you want to play anything like competitively, are the characters you want to play that you enjoy playing? Because there'll be some people who will play whatever. Like, you know, we were talking at the start of the stream about Warhammer. Yeah, I have my favourites in Warhammer, but I don't have one overriding favourite. And if I were to go back to playing competitively, which I can't really because there isn't the practice for me, but if I did, there isn't an army that I'd, you know, if there was an army that was strong for tournaments, I'd quite happily play it. Because I enjoy all of them. The same is not true in WoW. I would have had a much more straightforward experience in my years of raiding if either my favourite character wasn't a bloody paladin. I mean, there could have been ones that would have been pretty much as bad, I suppose. Or if I'd have enjoyed at the same level playing all of them. If I was like absolutely fine, whatever, it was the game I enjoyed, less bothered about the individual classes. Because that would have been easy. I'd have been a warlock or a rogue. It would have been that simple.
My ancestors fought against stone constructs, much like these in their war against the Drust. The Waycrests have always been hearty folk, but the Drust's magic was strong. We were losing the war. In the end, it was our scholars that turned the tide.
But in the event, I actually don't like playing other classes. Or, quite frankly, anymore, any other specs.
Wait, look out!
In a competitive way. Like even this one, I'll play it casually. I don't want to learn how to play the Hunter particularly well. Because I don't enjoy it enough to play it for that length of time.
Thank you, Mainlander. I thought that one had me for a moment.
Totally agree. Like, if you could just farm Dungeons and Raids on one character, get all the multi sets of weapons armor, that would be great.
As I was saying,
Yeah.
the tide of the war
I sometimes wonder if also Blizzard overestimate how much time they think people should be playing it anyway. I don't think WoW, as hobbies go, I mean, I know WoW is not that expensive. As games go, is it? I don't think it's more expensive than any other game. Do Blizzard really need people to be playing it all the time? I mean, I could, you know, I honestly don't know the answer to that. You know, but if they were to take the view that as long as people want to play it for a few hours a week, and that's enough for them to stay subscribed, if everything was account bound for alts, or virtually everything, so they just had to focus on one main character, if that's what they wanted to do, you know, I'd be interested to know if that makes a difference or not, because it wouldn't surprise me if people are okay if they're not into their competitive raiding or PvP or mythic dungeons. Just playing it for a couple of evenings a week and still subscribing, because the subscription cost, I mean, the cost of the game, what is it? 60 quid or something, and that's every 2 years. And then you've got, what, about 9 quid a month for the actual subscription? You know, even playing 1 or 2 evenings a week, that's not bad value.
I've never seen a construct that big before. Are you all right?
I mean, I don't know. Maybe if they did do what I'd be suggesting, it would be a disaster and lose loads more subscribers. I have no idea. What I'm curious about is whether Blizzard actually know or not. Or are they just assuming? You tried to get back into BfA a month ago, but this expansion has so many systems that you genuinely felt put off. It's much simpler in the past. It was much simpler in the past, yes. Unless, of course, that pass was Legion, in which case I'm not... Well, I suppose there are extra layers in BfA, I guess, compared to Legion. But I think Legion would have been pretty overwhelming as well, if you'd have come in late on and wanted to engage with it all. That's why I'm just looking at this, right? The purpose for this character, it's 114, get that number to 120, do some stuff to gear it up a bit. It'll get geared up to where it gets geared up. In Shadowlands, you'll just do some quests, and it's really a race on to get an item for each slot, and then you're into it. You're into your leveling. It's fine then. Hang on a minute, is she buggering off? I've forgotten what's going on here. I've got to go all the way back out again. I think it's some manipulation stuff. The more you have to play, the higher chance you get some sort of addiction, make you more invested. Yeah, maybe. Do you know... I mean, I've said this in the past as well, but a long time ago. So... BfA and Legion have the same attitude, like what you're describing there, that encouraging you to play, you know, really regularly. Am I lost? Am I lost? Am I going back the way I came? That encouragement to get you to play more than you would necessarily want to. I mean, the emissary quests are things about that, you know, although in theory you don't have to play every single day, you are pretty much... Oh, dear. Do you know what? Right, let's try one more time, then I'm just Hearthstoning out of it. Forgot my train of thought now, so I'm just trying to find my way out. Oh, yeah. So emissary quests and stuff like that. Can I actually get out of here? Has she trapped me in here? Oh no, it's okay. It's just me. So... Oh, no. No. Oh, no. My pet's going to die for me. I did not actually mean him to do that. Come here. Come here, pet. Come here. Sorry, I've completely lost my train of thought as I'm just trying to run out. I seem to be out of combat now. Go on, let's catch up with this anyway. Oh yeah, sorry about the multiplayer interplay. So, I thought in Legion, because in Legion I was a Mythic Raider, and I thought to myself that the whole artifact power system was obviously useless to Raiders, in that it wasn't going to encourage us to play more. In fact, it encouraged us to play less, ironically, because there were Raiders, certainly, they may not exist anymore because it might be impossible for them to play, but there were Raiders who... can I use that flat point? Who, you know, in days of yore would just they'd come online, they'd do the raiding, they'd be perfectly good raiders, they'd do the bare minimum needed, but they'd essentially not be around very much to do much of the other content. Now, all right, you don't want your whole raid guild to be like that because it's not very sociable, but at the end of the day, no, you can't. At the end of the day, that's how it was, and you just put up with it. So those couldn't exist anymore. So it actually reduced the raider pool. See where I'm going. Whereas I used to think, so the purpose of artifact power was for casuals. It's so that casual players will have some reason to log on each time. It's the incentive to keep them logging on, because they are the players who, if they find themselves not playing it for a week or two, might unsubscribe. That's how the thinking went in my head. Then I became a casual player under this system. And I went through two distinct phases. The first one was at the start of BfA, I was actually still playing the game. You know, I was doing Mythic Plus dungeons and stuff like that because there was another group of casual players that I knew that were doing the same thing. So I was able to engage in the game. I refused to do the raids unless I was doing it with people I knew. So that basically meant I wasn't doing them. Or not very many of them. But I would... I just ran the wrong way, didn't I? So, you know, I was playing the game, but my neck was not going up very high because I absolutely refused to do anything extra to boost it up. And there was no incentive for me to do it. I found as a casual player, this artifact power, which I had imagined was an incentive to a casual player, was not. Because here I was as a casual player, it was not incentivizing me to do extra. And that's as someone, you know, who was doing some Mythic Plus dungeons and stuff like that. And actually spending, you know, I was spending a couple of evenings a week on the game. Sometimes 2 or 3. So the whole thing fell apart from me at that point. And I'm not saying it's not an incentive to people. What I am saying is it shouldn't be, because it's not actually necessary. If you are a casual player, you don't need to worry about artifact power. And if you are a serious player, you do need to worry about artifact power. But it's not helping Blizzard retain any subscribers. So what purpose does it serve Blizzard to keep it in? Anyway, over there, your university is stopping in-person classes. You'll finish the semester by moving the classes online. For a university where it's largely lectures anyway, that's easily done. I mean, I was saying at the start, or at some point in the stream, you know, had I still been working at the college that I was working at, I personally would have been able to do that. I could have just moved my lessons online. The nature of the way that I was taught. Practicals, we wouldn't have been able to do. But if I think about it, we might have been able to have got the... Well, what I would be doing at this point would be to rush through all the practicals that I'd need doing for the rest of the year. And then... That camera's in the wrong place. So I would, yeah, I'd be able to do that. You're an engineering major, we have labs, okay. Wow. Depending on which year you're in, I suppose they just have to defer those to the following year.
I need you to find my sewing kit. It should be somewhere in my bag over there. The tome mentions that the Inquisitors of old would use weapons of silver to disrupt the magic of the Drust. If the Coven wields similar magic, they may be vulnerable to silver as well. Keep your sails true.
Oh, you're about to finish. Okay. Well, I don't know. At the end of the day, obviously they have to look after people's health.
To use against the Coven.
The
We will
battle
need
awaits.
able-bodied soldiers to wield them.
We have many capable troops stationed here, milady. They'll make fine recruits for
State your
your
business.
Order of Embers. Ouch!
Keep your distance,
Blazes
Mainlander.
was that for?
Hey!
Bloody
What way you
mainlanders.
pointing that
Friend
thing?
or foe? Ow! Keep your distance, mainlander.
Clumsy oaf.
The bloodflies are really fighting these days, aren't
Oh, okay.
New information. So, Marshal Reed
State
believes
your
that you are
business.
the key to driving back the Coven.
Ouch!
I have my
Friend or
doubts,
foe?
but I will carry out my orders.
Hey! Watch where you're pointing that distance, mainlander. Clumsy oaf. Hey! Watch where you're pointing that thing.
Friend or foe?
Do I think the virus will die down in the fall? Well, I mean, I don't know. I would think, I would hope in most places it will.
State your business. Ouch! What in blazes was that for? Ugh, bloody mainlanders.
The expectation in the UK is that it peaks over May, June. In other countries, it'll depend on how far along the curve they are. In some, it's already past the peak. In some, it'll get there sooner.
New orders, then? Come, Winston. Looks like we have witches to fight.
If you as a casual player now, you've totally given up on raiding. Legion was bad enough at BfA, was the nail in the coffin. Yeah, I mean, you know, when people used to say like Warlords of Draenor wasn't a good
You fast.
expansion,
You must think yourself so clever.
it was,
No matter. Soon you'll
and it was objectively a bad one, I suppose, but, you know, I enjoyed it because at the end of the day, the levelling was good. And that's what and also the raiding was good. And that's entirely what I enjoyed. You didn't have to do anything extra. There was other content you could do. There wasn't a lot of it. That's why I would still accept that it was a bad expansion, because there wasn't a lot of it. But it also meant you didn't have to do a load of unnecessary stuff. Whereas in Legion you did. Legion was an objectively better expansion, but at the same time, it was not as good an experience for me personally as a raider. Because of all the shit you had to do. I was bloody glad when I could stop levelling my artifact. And even then, I still had 2 other artifacts in theory if I was going to, you know, keep up with other specs that I should have done more on, but I couldn't be dealing with it. And that was really annoying as well. Like when you're talking about account-wise stuff, the fact that you had to level up your artifacts separately. No. I mean, that's where BfA is a bit better, because you've just got one. Doesn't matter how many specs you've got, you have basically got one. So that is better. It does show that sometimes they learn a little bit.
You have need of me? I am gone. So
Because that also, like, there were so many things in terms of the way Legion and ultimately BfA have developed that actively turn players off. You know, if you're a raider at whatever level, the amount of extra work to be able to keep up with all your artifacts, like you pick an artifact according to, particularly, like, let's say you're a DPS player with Warlock, you've got 3 DPS specs, and you pick the DPS spec that looks like it's the best at the start of the expansion, and you're leveling up that artifact weapon in Legion, and then all of a sudden the next tier it's not. It's actually the worst, significantly. So you've got, you know, and some players will play enough to have kept up with all of them, but many will not. And you're really putting them off. All of these things. Artifact power. I do not see how it encourages anyone to do anything. But I can see... How come I don't have that torch? Oh, because of course I haven't done bloody Alliance, have I? That's why. Artifact power is... I just see as something that just turns people off. I don't see how it encourages people. I must confess, I'm at a complete loss.
Here we are. Brothers and sisters.
For things to do, WoD was bad, but for RNG, BfA, worse. Well, I mean, I don't want to comment too much on the full BfA because I didn't play it, most of it.
How might I help?
But
today you become the beacon of hope against the endless foe.
Where's the
By the authority of House Waycrest.
Legion and BfA just feel like you're playing a long-term maintenance game.
Order of Embers.
Lovely day for some witch hunting, isn't it?
Well, the fact that, yeah, I mean, you're spending so much time doing content you didn't really want to do, or at least you didn't want to do as much of it.
Before we depart, I'll need someone to undertake a special task for the Order. Any recommendations, Marshal?
Captain Cleardawn, excuse me, Inquisitor Cleardawn is as reliable as they come. I'm sure she can handle anything you need her for.
Thank you, sir. What do you require of me, milady?
If we wish to defeat the Coven for good, we will need more than...
I mean, that's the problem. If they want people to play the game, you want to encourage them to play more of the content they enjoy. Accept that there's certain types of content people don't enjoy.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't enjoy PvP in this game. I've enjoyed PvP in other games, not in this game.
I understand you have a plan of attack.
Yes, we ride out on the mainlander's command.
Glory to House Waycrest.
We must drive out the dark. Word is given. Let us ride to Corlay.
Alright, where are we?
If I
Oh,
may have
hello.
a word with you, I would like your assistance. Farewell.
I might leave that. I might just try and follow one quest line. I might regret this. You'd take WoD over Legion BF any day because at least class design wasn't complete shite then. Yeah, it was alright actually. I didn't mind my Paladin at all in WoD. But I wonder what I'd have been doing actually had Legion, from that point of view, at least not required me to do a load of content that I didn't want to do. Thinking about it. Because the reason why I did... So, you know, like I say, at the end I did Legion, although I never got Mythic Kill Jaden. But we did everything else. And I joined another guild to try and, you know, be a bit more competitive in BfA. So the intention was very much to do BfA. And then it came to the point, I just realised the following year at work, well, I say realised, something happened. I was going to have to be doing a lot more work at work. I wouldn't have as long to spend playing WoW. Now, had it been...
Now they're no more than mindless pawns. We will have no choice but to cut through them.
I'm sorry.
Obey!
Had I not had, you know, if it were just the raiding I need to do and a little bit of stuff on the side for gathering materials and things like that, raid supplies type of thing, then I wouldn't have been have to make that decision. I would have been able to raid in BfA. Now, granted, I'm not now in that position, but it could well be that, because really what happened is when I stopped playing, the sequence of events was, so I stopped playing WoW seriously. Obviously then, you know, I stopped doing as much on the channel and eventually just stopped playing the game altogether. That's when I started doing stuff on the other channel. That may never have appeared, so I would, at the moment, I suppose it would be very much the case. I would still be just teaching at other place and I would just be doing very casual stuff in the game at this point. Well, I might still be raiding. But the point is, I certainly wouldn't have had to give it up at the time. I don't really know where I would be at the moment. Because I would say now I can't even do the raiding. because, and I don't just mean because now I'm doing full-time YouTube on a different channel. Obviously I'm in a relationship now, so that's taking time away, which I'm quite happy about, by the way. Everything works out for a reason, as I say. Oh yeah, because there is a sequence of events that it's, you know, if it weren't for that, if it weren't for Blizzard doing that, I might be in a very different situation now. In fact, I almost certainly would be. Right, what does he want me to do? Falconer's whistle. What does that mean?
You mind your business, and I'll mind mine. This land is cursed.
Speaking of which, 5 minutes, and then... Right, what am I doing here? Is this inside or outside? Oh. I guess outside. So I'm just gonna... No, I'm not gonna do this. Have I? I've just about got enough time to do this, I think.
Will you hold still?
Hello?
I need to make this tight.
I'm trying. It would be easier if you weren't
I don't think I have to do anything on this one, do I? Or do I?
Well done. Now, the path to Waycrest Manor runs through Upper Core Lane. We should check that out first.
Oops. Oh, I was supposed to be steering it, was I? I thought it was just doing its thing. Alright, fine. I don't even know where I'm supposed to be going. Oh, okay.
So, they put up a barrier, eh? I can't say I'm surprised. That will prove problematic. Why don't we do a flyover of the town proper? Be sure to come in low enough that we can get a good look.
No idea where I'm supposed to be going. Waycrest Manor. Right, he didn't say he was happy with my exploratory little fly around there. What have I missed out? Doesn't seem to be any sort of progress indicator on this. Oh, for goodness sake. Right, I've had enough of this. For now. Because I'm going to have to get back anyway. Right. Where am I going? I'll just go and junk all the stuff I've got. And call that. not quite 115.
Nelly deals for a friend of the Grumbles. He's like you.
Right, I shall call that for this week. I'll be back on again next week, I think. Again, just carry on with the Hunter. So thanks very much for coming on, and until next time, have a good night, and I'll see you later.